and welcome to the 14th episode of the Wildcat podcast. We have a very special episode. We're entitling this one Senior Memories because we have brought in some seniors. We have Q, or Quentin.
Who's a senior?
Who's a senior. Spoiler alert. Nathan, he's a junior. Just kidding. You know who he is. And then we have Jibbles.
Whoa, you gonna do me like that right here on the podcast?
Yes, I am.
I'm James.
And we're also joined by Nicole, who is also a senior.
And Easton, who is also a senior.
No, I am not. I am a freshman.
Okay.
Believable. Well, that's how he acts.
Who wants to start with some senior memories stories?
All right, I'll begin. This first one kind of doesn't follow any theme, but so we're at a basketball game, freshman year. We're in the pep band, and the Wildcat singers are performing the national anthem, and so it's a moment of great. Nathan's remembering this memory. It's a moment of great respect, of dignity. It's remembering the people who've served our nation, and it's really just a moment of great respect. Everyone's quiet, and the next thing we know, we hear boom, 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 boom. We look over, and the bass clarinet player has lost track of his instrument. So it's sliding from the very top down each individual step, not stopping during the national anthem. So everyone's quiet, it's dignified, and then just boom, boom, boom. Bass clarinet player's scrambling down the stairs to find his bass clarinet. And we look over, and I've never seen anyone, much less Mr. Shores, with such a look of both just anger and also sheer disappointment in a single person in my life. It was a fantastic moment that I don't think I'll forget.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think any senior memory from this class would be complete without mentioning the English teacher from last year. So, also debate. Debate had a lot of memories. So
why
it's...
why don't you brainstorm some of those up, Nathan?
Oh, that's not going to be hard. So
Right, it was our last debate season, so that's where the memories are.
yeah.
It's last debate season.
So it was...
It wasn't me.
No.
Yet.
So it's about 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Jaron Caffrey and I are joining Mr. Sutherland, who wore his famous black jeans and black slides with no socks.
Which, okay, we can't just leave it there because just take a moment. You've got a middle-aged white man in slides and no socks with frayed bits of jean at the bottom of his legs. It was a shock.
So this was a common theme. So we're heading to Newton, and this is a man who was back in his element. He was so excited to be back in the Wichita area because he knows how to get places. So we're heading
Enough
out
to brag about knowing
right.
about the place.
So we're heading out to Newton. It's just me and Jaron in the back seat with Mr. Sutherland driving, and he proceeds to go south on Haven-Bueller Road because he thinks taking 96 to Newton is the fastest way. So we inform him that it's not the fastest way, so he quickly apologizes and begins to turn into a driveway after almost running us into the ditch. He turned a little too early. So he's backing out across Haven-Bueller. We finally go in the right way. The entire time driving down Haven-Bueller Road and eventually Highway 50, he puts his right hand up on the steering wheel while throwing his right arm back onto the shoulder of his seat, and is having eye-to-eye conversations with us for about 10 seconds at a time, basically just discussing strategy with us about this debate tournament, all while going with 10, 15 seconds, not even paying attention to anything that's going on the road. Somehow is able to stay in his lane. I don't know how this man wasn't even on the shoulder. He was able to stay in his lane while having eye-to-eye conversations with us. But we get almost to Newton, and there's a big roundabout where you need to take an exit on the left. And of course, it ends up to where he's again going around this roundabout while having conversations with us. He misses the exit about twice. So we're going on this very long roundabout. Again, he claims that he knows where to get places, all while having conversations with us. But we got there about half an hour later than we should have, just because all while having conversations, he never paid attention to the speedometer, so he'd be going about 35 down Highway 50. So yeah, that was always an exciting moment.
I remember hearing about, from when you would come back from debate tournaments, how he would give the other team pointers.
Oh yeah. While we were at league, he spent a good portion of the day, probably 90% of the day, just discussing strategy with the Nickerson teams who ended up winning league.
And Q, I was gonna quickly cut you off before you go,
Okay.
because I've got something that piggybacks off that story. But we were going to El Dorado, and he puts it in his GPS on his phone. We drive to El Dorado, and we can't find the school.
I think I've
And
heard
so
this one
he's
before.
looking and he says, "This is where it's taken me, but it must be wrong because we're not at the school." So we sit there and we kind of drive around. We're in the middle of a residential area, and then basically in El Dorado, and it takes about 5 minutes before one of us has to take his phone and realize that he typed El Dorado, not El Dorado High School, but just El Dorado the town, and was shocked when it took him to a random spot in El Dorado. So we realized we were 2 miles away from the school where we were actually supposed to be.
He thought it was Google's fault that it didn't just know that he wanted him to take us to the El Dorado High School, not just in the middle of El Dorado.
Oh, and then, I mean, there's the journals in Mr. Sutherland's class. I mean, who could forget those?
The only reason people had 150% in
Oh,
any
yeah.
class.
I mean, I had 144%, and the reason why was because my syllabus, 100%, dragged my grade down 6%. I mean, I had 150% worth of journals with no other assignments, and then the stinking syllabus dropped me down to 144. It was so disappointing. But tacking on to that, some of the comments he would write in your journal after he would say that it's just between you and him, and then read it aloud to the class was also kind of interesting.
How he would said, "Oh, your journals are a judgment-free zone," and then he would just judge anybody. He called me a racist. I think that's the first time I've been called the racist by a teacher.
Well, and then it's just in classes is the crazy thing about Mr. Sutherland is because I got to the point where I'd go into debate, and to actually get anything done, you'd have to just tune him out.
Oh, you know.
Because he would literally grandstand in his classroom for the entire hour talking. And then he'd be shocked that we hadn't accomplished anything, that we sat there talking for literally the entire hour. So I go in one day, and he's 20, 30 minutes into his ramble of a lecture. I'm sitting there working, and he turns to me and says...
Working or playing cool math?
Well, okay, I was probably on cool math, but I was tired of listening to Sutherland.
Weren't we all?
Yeah. So I get the dreaded question. He turns to me. He goes, "What do you think about that, James?" And I sat there, and I'm trying to think of some witty response to the 30 minutes I had tuned him out. And I go, "I'm sorry. I've been tuning you out." So at this point, the teachers realized that he stood there for half hour, and I haven't listened to a word he has said. He goes, "Oh, no, you're great. You're great. I understand." Rephrase the question. He realized that I had sat there for a half hour ignoring him, and that didn't faze him. He sat there thinking I guess he knew we weren't listening to him, and it still just, he thought it benefited him somehow to just stand there and talk to himself in front of us for 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time.
Incredible. He was a really nice man.
He was.
He was a nice man. We're not
One thing I
bashing
would have
that
to say,
part.
he was a very genuinely nice man. Like, it was nice to have conversations with him.
Yeah, he cared
And then-
about the students.
And then they would quickly spiral out of control.
Yes, I'm sorry, underclassmen, that you never got to have a class with him. But
I'm also very happy.
I'm also
for you.
happy for you at the same time. So,
I was gonna say, are you sorry?
well, it's the experience more than it
an
is the
experience
class.
more than anything.
Yeah, it was.
Well, we had like 4 to 5 teachers in English last
I think
year.
it was 4.
Yeah.
It was
There's four
four
different
It was
teachers.
4 different teachers for for English 11, and so you underclassmen will never probably experience that
Hopefully.
again.
Well, that was a
Hopefully.
change too, because we went from cold turkey doing nothing to all of a sudden we actually have to do
I
something now.
know.
Other than
what the heck,
Germans.
Miss Mauder?
Like, come
at
on!
At least
I-
Mrs. Matter knew. She came in and she was like, I know what's been going
Oh,
on
yeah.
here.
I love.
I know
Yeah.
the work ethic.
It's-
I understand. Let's get into this. We actually had, I think, a day or two where we just kind of discussed
What had happened?
what the state of English 11 had been up till then. And
It was a hot mess.
what was the term that she used? That we were, because you weren't in my class, but there was some term that we used. It was some fishing analogy that we used. I'd have to ask Caleb Dale,
Yeah.
but all right, I
Okay,
have to tell
okay.
the story.
Oh yeah.
Caleb
Sorry.
Dale. Caleb Dale's in our
No,
class,
it's-
and Mr. Sutherland is talking to us, and this is English, so we pay a little bit more attention than we did in debate. And he's sitting there talking to us, and he goes,
Oh no.
how many of you have heard of James Patterson? So all of us have heard of James Patterson. We've all seen the commercials, so we all throw our hand up. And he very quickly changes the question to, who likes James Patterson? Well, Caleb Dale, having had his ankles broken by this question, raises his hand, and Mr. Sutherland turns to him and goes, what's your favorite thing about James Patterson? Now, every single person in the room except for Sutherland knew that Caleb Dale never opened a James Patterson book. So we're sitting there, we're like, surely he's going to admit that he doesn't know. He goes, what's your favorite thing about James Patterson? Caleb Dale turns and, honest to God, looks Sutherland in the eye and goes, his personality. His favorite thing about the author was his personality. And Mr. Sutherland just kind of laughed it off, but I think he thought Caleb Dale was genuine in liking his personality.
This kind of reminds me of an off Sutherland story. It was banned last year, and Mrs. Hayes had brought in a jazz professional. I don't remember who exactly it was, but he had asked the question, "Who here likes jazz?" It actually is kind of the exact same scenario. So Jaron Caffrey raises his hand because almost everybody in the room raised their hand because they like jazz.
Because it was jazz band.
It was
wasn't
jazz
it?
band.
Yeah, everyone likes
And
jazz.
He spaces off and keeps his hand raised while not paying attention to anything. So again, he switches the question from who likes jazz to mentioning a specific jazz artist or a specific jazz style, and asks somebody to expound or if they've heard of this specific jazz style. So Jaron is still raising his hand, oblivious to everything that's happening. So the guy, he looks at Jaron and says, "Oh yes, could you expound on that?" So Jaron turns and goes, "I like jazz." Just making it complete. It was all while oblivious to everything that was going on. And I think the guy thought Jaron was a special student. So.
Before we continue, Nicole, would you like to name off our sponsors?
Our
this week?
sponsors are Shield and High Reach.
All right.
The rest of it.
All right. Q, you have not told the story yet. What's your
no.
favorite memory?
Staying along the lines of Sutherland, I think
Mr. Moore, if you are watching this is not as solely...
this.
No, there's been other
There's been
stories.
other
There's been other
There's some
stories.
other
There's been
great
some other
stories.
There's a little bit of recency bias here too, because it was last year.
Oh yeah,
All right,
because
yeah.
I mean, freshman and sophomore year, those are just a blur.
Mhm.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't even really remember what I
No.
had for breakfast. So.
Okay, anyway, continue.
But I remember
So-
what Mr. Sutherland wore every Saturday.
Oh yeah, can't forget that.
No.
It's burned into my skull.
No, we're going through the crucible, and
Oof.
Oh no,
Oof.
we're.
for like 4 months.
Oh,
it
yeah.
felt like.
It took at least 3 months trying to get through that book. But
One
anyways,
chapter for a month.
yes, and so through this whole class, we're sitting there and we are discussing one line for 20 minutes, and then we get to the second line and it's 20 minutes more. So that's almost the entire class. And we're sitting here and he goes, "Now, can anyone tell me what these 2 lines mean?" And
The answer should have been no.
and no one raises their hand. And he was just so disappointed in us. And he's like, "Come on, guys. Can you at least just brainstorm something for me?" But no one really knew what it meant.
I feel
given-
like that has become a massive inside joke between
it's
the
not
senior
really
class.
an
Oh yeah,
inside
it
joke,
gave a
though.
whole new meaning to
A snap.
to
Oh,
BS.
to snap.
Oh, yeah.
When you refer to BS, it was either Ben Sutherland or the other meaning of BS,
Or
brainstorm.
Brainstorm.
Yes.
Well,
so
always,
safe.
which always went along the lines of
The brainstorming and the snapping can never be separated.
Oh, no.
Oh, no,
Oh,
no.
See, I'm just brainstorming
They're
here.
joined in matrimony.
No.
We were asked to come and give memories, and we just had to sit there and we were just brainstorming. We are just coming up with different ideas of memories.
Different ideas.
That
about
might have
what
made
you
for an
could-
interesting podcast.
Interesting writing. So you write on what do you ever like to write about. Take attendance real quick, and then we'll get to the crucible.
I heard that phrase. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that phrase, I wouldn't need to be here. I could retire, and I could live a happy life.
Reading James Patterson. books.
Reading James Patterson and enjoying his personality.
Very much so.
Oh, man.
Oh my.
We really could go all day.
we could.
Oh yeah.
And that's not even talking about some of his comments about atheism and
Oh yeah.
his knowledge.
That's just a rabbit hole that we probably shouldn't get.
No.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Don't touch that.
No, it's a long rabbit trail.
yeah.
We like to avoid politics here on the Wildcat Podcast.
Yes, we do. We do.
We could be on that for a while too.
And if you know me, that's pretty ironic.
That is. I also remember freshman year in Coach Tallman's class, and Coach Tallman would love literally nothing more
Mm-hmm.
than to just jump on Easton's nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter what it was, even
Mhm.
just calling him Weston.
I've accepted that now. That's what I
Absolutely,
put on
and-
my papers.
But
I mean-
only from Tallman.
But
If
Only for
anyone else
Tallman.
calls him Weston, he gets offended.
Oh,
Yeah, only Tallman can do that.
And I mean, it was just hours worth of entertainment, and I don't think I've laughed that hard in a science class since Tallman's made fun of Easton's freshman
And
year.
you're not in physics.
I'm not in physics though.
Those two know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Hey, everyone just hates on me because I actually try to understand the material, and then everyone just
See,
I'm
that's-
the
That's your
bad
problem.
guy.
That's your problem, James. You try to understand.
I think I remember most. It was in entrepreneurship with Miss Het. Was it? I think it was James Hinkle and Thane Unruh. They were fighting in that room. This was when she was in the Z Space lab between what was now the Z Space lab, and then they were fighting in that room between Miss Wilson's and there. Somehow they got behind the door. One of them fell into the wall and just destroyed it. And it was like that for a solid 2 months. And if you would ever go in there to talk to her about something, you would see them in there fixing it, like plastering the wall. It was funny.
I remembered another story that I'd just forgotten about. There was one day in debate where we'd gotten through debate. It was tournament prep, wasn't it?
Oh, so it was right
Was this
after
last
he
year
left.
passed?
Was it
Yeah,
right after
last
he
year?
left?
Yes, it was tournament prep.
Yeah. So
No, it was way before that.
okay, way before tournament prep. Anyway, it's not really that important. It was the learning day for mass band, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's the high school's time to learn the mass band routine. We really didn't have any other time to prep it or learn it. So we're in debate, and then we get onto the topic of forensics. And Mr. Sutherland is sitting there
Here he is again.
talking to us about forensics. So he sits there and we chit chat. This is after the bell was rung for
This
25.
is so
30
debate
minutes.
debate class was third hour. This is spilling into fourth hour when band was.
So this is our one opportunity to learn this certain thing for band. This is like our opportunity. Half hour goes by into band. He just blatantly takes up any teacher's time, doesn't care, because he'd rather talk to
Absolutely
us.
no cares.
He goes, "Oh, let me write you a pass." I was like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Appreciate it.
He goes to his desk drawer, of which we found later that he had pink pass slips in his desk.
Like 2 stacks.
Oh, so he apparently didn't realize this at the time. Grabs a thing of Post-its. Grabs a Post-it, I kid you not, this tall and this wide.
Like
It's-
probably half an inch tall and maybe 2 inches, 3 inches
Yeah,
wide.
if you've ever seen the thing people use as like a little bookmark, those Post-it
Mhm.
notes. He proceeds to grab a pen and write out a full pass on this piece of paper. So he's writing it out. Sutherland to Hayes. So we.
And then the date.
Oh, and then the date.
And then maybe the reason. I don't remember.
Oh yeah. So we walk up a half hour late on one of the most important days of band, and Mrs. Hayes was already in kind of a bad mood, and she's got a lot on her plate, and she needs us to be there. We're half hour late. All we have to present her with is a Post-it note, like a half inch by maybe 1 inch, that explains why we were late. So I pull it out of my pocket, and I can almost not even straight face hand her this pass, if we could even call it that. She was mad. She was mad by this point.
Oh, that's
It was
bigger.
Yes.
Yes, it's one of those. He used to hand those out all the time.
This little pink thing, Mr. Sutherland, to Hayes, date and reason.
And so she's got to read this. And Mr. Sutherland didn't have particularly good handwriting to begin with. And it's this big. That was one of the high points of.
It was not sufficient. It
of
was
junior
not a
English.
sufficient pass.
I don't think a pink pass would have been sufficient to
For a
not
half hour
upset
late.
her. But no, this tiny little slip that I had to straight-faced hand to an angry teacher in attempts to not be in trouble for being a half hour late.
And who could forget the day that he left?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
We were
That
gone.
day-
when
Yeah,
we left.
man
you
was
guys were
gone.
We're at
gone.
the Career Expo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were gone.
Okay.
I remember that day.
Yeah.
So-
that was. I'm not sure if that was like cry or happy
Bit of
or both.
Well,
But it was the most weird mix of feelings I've ever had.
we had a tournament, a debate tournament. And so, I mean, we host one every year.
4 days later.
Yeah, well, yeah, 3 to 4 days after this happens, we have a debate tournament scheduled. And Mr. Sutherland, leading up to this, doesn't seem to understand his limits. He's a first-year teacher at Haven. He's coming into the debate program that he's obviously shown ignorance about. He has no idea of the layout of this area and what a tournament should be. He proceeds to invite school after school after school. We're scrambling. We're finding closets practically to put debate rounds into because there is no room to run this debate tournament.
He is inviting 6A schools from Wichita, Salina, Kansas City, asking them to bring as many students as possible.
And so,
Varsity, JV, novice, the whole shebang.
so we
It's not
have
a
to.
big enough school.
It's
Oh
not big enough
no.
school. We don't have enough of a judge pool
So
to
in the
find.
days leading up, he is having us get phone books of the local area, just start calling random numbers, asking them if they would like to come here and judge debate. Which judging debate is already probably it's
pretty low on the list
It's
of
pretty
things
low
to do on a Saturday.
on a Saturday morning. So that didn't work out so well.
So
See, turn this way here. This is how you're supposed to, ask for judges. Forms, not phone books.
Oh yeah. So we've already discussed that he's ignorant about this area and debate. So he comes up to me and he says, I think we're going to. He runs on the assumption that because a certain rule was suspended at state last year, that he can suspend it whenever he wants. He thinks that he can just do it whenever he wants. So he says, we're going to suspend the Keisha rule about on-time roadmaps. And I said, that's a terrible idea. People that will cause only issues and will not solve any problems. I said, that's a terrible idea. As someone who knows this league, that's a terrible idea. He goes, well, it's my tournament. I'll do what I want. So we already know this is going to crash and burn big.
Wait, so he didn't he wasn't open to your idea?
Oh no.
No, my idea was following the Keisha rule, and he wanted to go against it and was not going to listen to me, and that we should follow a Keisha rule.
Okay.
So
It's
real
such
quick,
a small rule, but people in this area, it's live or die by Keisha, basically.
Yeah.
so on the off chance that people don't know what the Keisha rule is, what is it?
So it basically says that you give a roadmap. You basically say, I'm going to talk about this, 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 and this. And that's about as long as it takes. It takes about 5 seconds. The difference is, should it be on time or off time? People who say it should be off time, then they argue that you can just spend a ton of time arguing stuff without actually using up your time.
So time
That's why
limit.
it becomes an issue.
Okay.
He wanted
Okay.
to suspend that, and it does little good and opens for a lot of harm. And they said that the last thing he said before they left the hour on the day he left was, "I think we can pull this off." Talking about the debate tournament.
I'm pretty sure he threw a boys. I think we can pull it off, boys.
Yeah, I think we can pull this off, boys.
On the last
Leaves.
day he was there? Yeah. Mhm.
We have to cancel the largest tournament that Haven has ever attempted to run,
I remember
Probably
that.
anybody in this area has
I
ever
remember
attempted
that
the
day.
run.
which was not really that big an issue because it was going to crash and burn anyway.
It,
And now
it
we've
probably
got angry
saved
debate
embarrassment.
judges.
Probably,
It probably saved
it
face.
saved a lot of headaches,
Yeah.
but also caused a lot of headaches.
Yeah, it was.
That's
It was
how
quite
life
the.
went.
It was quite the experience trying to figure out: do we keep the tournament going? What do we do? What do we figure out here? So
All right. Thank you for joining us with our Senior Memories podcast. It's going to be the first of many, apparently. It's my
Why not?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
yeah, there's more than
there's
5
more than
seniors.
that.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
school.
Yeah, we're
There's-
going to I
There's
think
at least like
every other week.
was there 8, 9?
Every other podcast? Yeah.
At
I mean-
least once a month, somewhere around there.
It's like the biggest graduating class Haven has had in a while. There's like
And I think
there's
we
like
have the most
nine
memories.
seniors, I think. So I mean, imagine this 2 more times. We'll have the whole senior class.
All right.
Oh, and then Easton and Nicole are so there's
So there's 11
There's
now.
4
11.
more.
Yes.
There's 4 more. Oh, 11 or okay. Whatever. There's like 9 to 11 seniors.
Okay.
All right. I thank you guys for joining us and sparing your time. Again, thank you.
Yeah, happy
Yes,
to
thank
happy
you.
to do this. Thanks for inviting us.
All right.